6:32. So order of business. So let me just make a couple notes regarding agenda and then just a procedural note. I think we will have a short executive session at the end just to discuss midterm evaluation. And then also just kind of procedurally, Mia, who I see is remote, is going to be joining me in the weekly meetings with Libby to help plan and set out agendas. So we are starting that, I think, as of tomorrow. So that the idea behind that is just to get an extra voice, also to make sure that Mia is kind of as informed as I am when she needs to step into the chair role. And so we'll start that tomorrow. And so on to the next order of business, which is public comment. Do we have any public comment? We have one person in the room. Anyone on Zoom who wants to comment? Please raise your hand. I don't see anyone. So in the room, please step up to the table and also announce your name just so we have.
Sure, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Maniscalco. I'm a parent of a student at Union Elementary School, and I am the husband of a second grade teacher at Union Elementary School, and also a former special educator in the Lamoille North Supervisory Union. On Friday, the 27th of January, a student at Union Elementary School was having a student in crisis at Union Elementary School was having an intense behavioral episode that occurred in the hallway of one of the primary grade wings of the building. The student was screaming, kicking and punching the door to their own classroom, and then proceeded to move to another classroom and continued screaming, kicking and punching the entry door to the second classroom while standing outside of it. This episode went on for about 45 minutes, screaming, kicking and punching the entire time. In some cases, students were unable to leave their classrooms or needed to go to the bathroom unless they had an adult escort. Some students were visibly crying and reported being scared that the student in question could have perhaps broken the glass panel on the classroom door. Teachers reported feeling as though they were, quote, under siege in their own classrooms. The student was monitored by adult staff. My presumption is that these adults wanted to monitor the student to avoid further escalating behavior. No one's blaming the student. No one's singling out the student. My question is, why was the student not guided or, if absolutely last resort necessary, physically restrained and taken to a safe space so that the other kids did not experience trauma and interruption to their learning environment? In what is supposed to be a safe learning environment. This was not the first incident. These are occurring in other grades as well, perhaps not to that degree of severity. It is understandable that some students will have such behavioral episodes because that is the reality of public school. Teachers have worked extremely hard, comprehensively with proactive strategies to minimize all behavioral outbursts. However, at times, even the best framework is not enough. Therefore, my question is, what is the school's plan to address escalated violent behavior with some level of accountability? Many teachers feel as though students are having big behaviors with little processing afterwards or accountability, suggesting that the school needs consistent protocols in place from administration. Are qualified and licensed district personnel afraid to restrain a child because of the perceived impact on their reputations? Are classroom teachers supposed to bear the brunt of the most severe behavioral issues within the school environment? Is there a consistent protocol in place from administration to keep teachers and students safe in extremely tense and emotionally heightened situations? May the school be more affected with an intervention room model similar to which has been placed up at Johnson Elementary School for over 10 years? In such a model, highly qualified behavioral support personnel are in place to support students when they experience unpredictable and sometimes violent behaviors. And if they must, absolutely last resort, physically remove the students from a certain setting in order to keep all students and staff safe. I have Vermont State Board Rule 4500 concerning restraint and seclusion to be used in order to create and maintain a positive and safe learning environment. Maybe these schools haven't needed the protocols in the past. This is our reality now. We hear it in Bristol. We hear it in Bennington. It's here now. It's been here for a while. This is our new reality. No one's singling out any student, but one student in crisis should not hold the entire wing of the elementary school hostage for 45 minutes to an hour, with qualified licensed personnel watching them. It just really doesn't make sense to me that this is the point where we are.
Great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the info.
Thank you.
All right, not seeing anyone online. Let's go to consent agenda. Do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Jill. Do you have a second? Thank you, Seiji. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda passes. All right, and now we welcome back Nathan to pick up on the visioning process that we have started. And I think for one, thank you for all the great work, and thanks for coming again. And I think one thing that we probably want to focus on this spring, now that the budget is passed, is really wrapping up the visioning process and getting an idea of what we want to do with it. And I think Nathan is going to talk to us about priority setting, which is integral in the new policies that we are likely going to adopt in the latter part of the meeting.
Right. Good to see you all again. I'll wait till the camera's on me.
And Mia, is he audible on the
Mia, can you hear me?
at home?
My name is Nathan Suter, and I'm here consulting with the board to support them on priority setting. Looks like Mia can hear me. Okay. So I think I've got about 50 minutes to work with you tonight. And the process I've designed is not a sit in our seats, talk to each other across the room process, but could be adapted to do that if you wish. I figured. It's one of these. Is it a made for TV event or not? First, let me just talk about my thoughts about how you/we might approach this. In case, so for Mia and Zach and Kristen, I don't know if Kristen's, looks like Kristen's not. She had real life came up. Okay. Mia, did you get the materials I sent via email? If you didn't see those, please check those because that's what I'm working from. Okay.
Seeing it and reading it are different things.
Okay, so I think if I were a board member, this process might take place over a few sessions because I think you have it would be iterative, and I think the first thing might be identifying areas that you're particularly focused on, and maybe making some distinctions between what is important, sort of long term, and what is urgent for a shorter term, this year and a half, and then trying to figure out how to establish a high level pool of these are the most important issues to this district right now. And I think so part of that would include at some point naming what your focus areas are and then what fits underneath those focus areas. So here's an example. If if you had broad agreement that academics are a major reason that the district exists, you might simply say academics, but you might also say, one of our goal areas or one of our priorities is excellence in teaching and learning. So, semantics can matter. And so that there'll probably be some discussion on that, and we'll do some of that tonight. And another piece about the sort of the contrast between urgent and important is where I think things get interesting for a school board, which is for someone in Libby's position and the rest of the school administration and educators, they're on a long trajectory of many systems and many, the career path of a teacher, the educational path of a student, the life and durability of the facilities, et cetera. And so that's why I think the question of urgency versus important is useful, because I suspect that, of course, on a long-term vision, academics or academic excellence or learning would be the highest priority almost all the time. But if the district or if the school board feels as though teaching and learning is well under control in the near term, you might prioritize in the next year or so something more highly than that. The example I used in this document that I just handed out puts operations, or in this case, sort of facilities and maintenance, as a low priority for urgency. It may be that this school board feels as though with the capital spending plan and the 5-year facilities plan that the facilities area is always important, but is not urgent as a sort of priority for the board or priority for the district in the next year or two, because it is sort of well structured and well taken care of. Mostly I'm introducing that idea, and I want you to think about maybe being willing to decide, okay, this area feels like it's on fire and we really need to attend to that. This area feels as though we always care about it, but it's under control, and the district is doing this well. Am I making sense? Is that resonating?
So it's the little urgent, important.
Yeah.
Important, not urgent. Not important, not urgent.
Right. Some people would do that in a
Not
quadrant.
important, urgent.
Right.
Yes.
And so in the examples I gave, sort of two lists that are sorted differently by, rank of importance. And then I say, it's also probably useful to think about priorities for the district or strategic goals, not necessarily as a ranked list, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, but rather as a pool of all these things are important. One priority or one goal might realistically take 2 or 3 years to attend to, and another might be resolved in 6 months. And so I think it's also useful to, be mindful of the complexities of some of these things if you're trying to make change or gain traction. So what I'm proposing and then, though we don't have a ton of time together this evening, this is a very capable board with a number of people on it who are able to facilitate process like this without me being present. And so what I'm hoping to do is that this can act as a scaffold or as a process that you all can replicate without me in the room or without somebody else, although I'm always happy to work with you, acknowledging that we probably aren't going to resolve all the school board or the district priorities tonight to the point of sort of them being ready for print and then to be handed off to the administration. Sound good?
Yes.
All right. So for me, it's always useful to respond to something that's drafted, even if it's not the right fit for what you're hoping for. So the example that I gave earlier of trying to attend to a focus area that we might call academics by calling it excellence in teaching and learning. You may not like that word choice, and that's fine. So what I'd like to do is have us get up. I've printed some of these out in large type. I've also got the backside of a bunch of blank pieces of paper, and I've got some big black markers. And if you want to come up with your own focus area, and I can think of others that I didn't print out, let's do a little bit of that. Let's see where people are thinking about how we name these sort of high level focus areas. And then let's do a little bit of sort of scenario work where we think about, okay, we heard a lot of community input in the last 6 months about, or 8 months about bullying in our schools. If I care a lot about bullying, where does that fit underneath these focus areas? And how do I as a board member, how do we as a board create a priority area, if that's a big priority, that ensures that the administrative team is resourced and focused on creating an environment where bullying is less likely to happen, for example. I think the board has also heard about reading and learning around reading. So it's not the board's job to decide which curriculum tools the district uses to teach reading, but if you care about the district really focusing on reading and, say, students achieving proficiency at grade level, what language do you choose to use that empowers Libby and the district to really focus on that? Acknowledging that there's an opportunity cost to everything, right? If you really focus on one thing, probably some other things are maybe not being as well attended to. So I'm trying to think in terms of Orca Media. So I don't know your name. Sean. Well, yeah, so I might have you move over when we close those doors over there. We can use that as a sort of working wall. So I'm going to move everybody over there and we're going to work over there. Okay. All right. Come on up.
I love the confidence, Sean. I can film
got
anything.
it.
Don't you worry.
I got this. You can. Yeah.
Microphones are over there.
I think you go with the handheld, the Blair Witch Project. It's going to be great. Okay, so you have this handout, or you have this in an email. So as I said, I made up a number of these focus area titles. And I'm going to start just taping them up to the wall. You can untape them, rearrange them. You can put check marks. I don't think we're at the point of voting yet, but if others that have occurred to me since I sent this to the printer include, right? You could choose to say, you could choose to address.
I just thought that
Yeah.
we have Mia remotely. Is there a way for her to be able to?
Mia, if I give you my,
She's got I'll get my. cell
Okay.
phone, so you don't have to worry about it.
okay,
Text me, Mia, with ideas.
yeah, or even call. We can just put you on speakerphone with Libby. Fantastic. All right. So, for example, what if we really want to attend to student needs and readiness for learning, right? Are we able to support students with mental health needs well enough in our schools? Do we want to do that in our schools? What if the thing you think is most important for the next 2 years is recruit, retain, and develop high quality staff at every position, right? Like, any of those things are possible. So have at it. Don't accept my drafts. Make your own.
So picking what we.
Well, I'm just going to start sticking these up, but they're blank sheets of paper. This
Are we adding to it, or would you like?
I would add to it, or you can modify. Right. So partly the reason I do this is you might look at this and say, oh, that's totally off base. Great. How is it off base and what would you prefer to see? Right. And if I'm Libby and if I'm the chair of the board, I don't want 11 strategic goals.
No.
Way too much, right? 5, maybe. 5 is my target. So think about that. If you've got to reduce it, how many do you want living? 3, okay. But keep that in mind, right? This, and it might, again, I think that's part of why it's interesting to talk about important versus urgent, because it may be that there's something that's important, but it's actually doing okay right now. So if you don't make that a strategic goal, it doesn't mean it's not important. It just means not right now. Thank you, Joe. And if you don't start drafting new ones soon, I'm just gonna have you vote on these and we're gonna roll with it. And then you'll be really good at it.
I'm trying to see if there's anything truly missing.
Well, I'm thinking about the recruitment and retention and the diversity combination, which is part of the goal that is overlaps some of the.
Well, how big are these umbrellas? Like, could that fit into the agenda item?
Right, so
Yeah.
can I talk to that for a second?
Okay.
So justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. You could certainly make an argument that, oh, we're gonna be attentive to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in everything that we do.
Yeah.
And that might work, right?
Yeah.
Libby might be able to say to the district leadership and to teachers, we need to attend to this. Here's some ways we're gonna attend to it. Go do it. But it's also possible that in the sort of heat of battle, or the year that happens, COVID or any who knows what, but something like that gets lost if it's not top level, if it's not named, and if it's not prioritized. If I'm a university that says, we care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but I don't create an office for that, or I don't create, a dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can start about that.
No, I don't. It's still here. Yeah, I'm just making it better.
Look it to my lapel, and then we're gonna stop talking. Right, if you don't create a position, a dean position at a university dealing with this, do you then lose focus on it because there are so many other things to focus on? So that's the kind of thinking I want you to do is, okay, wait a minute, what are the things that are most important, most urgent right now for the next year and a half, 2 years? Let's make sure we name them. No, well, first you're looking, is everything you want to consider there? And if not, add more. And then once we've done that, then let's narrow it and try to prioritize. The one on the right, this version of excellence in teaching and learning includes some sub bullets, right? Student achievement, reduce or eliminate the achievement gap.
Yeah, that's.
Recruit, retain, develop high quality staff at all positions, which might be a strategy in service of excellence in teaching and learning. Fully staff and train for multi-tier systems of support excellence, right? If you feel like we've got this system, MTSS, and we're just not quite getting there on implementation, we're willing to focus on that. That starts to, the other question is what's too granular for the board? And then identify, implement, and train staff on a social emotional learning approach and curriculum, right? Do we have an SEL curriculum? Maybe not. Even if we do, is everybody trained on it, right? So this is an example of what might fall below or fall underneath one of these focus areas.
I feel like recruitment and retention could almost be its own item because it's a non-trivial task.
Right, that's really important.
To me, a lot depends on how specific we want to be, because I think we're always going to want excellence in teaching and learning, right?
I'm
And
just gonna text Mia some of these.
She's got it. All those are in her email.
Okay, but just so she knows what we're all looking at.
Okay.
And I can help her make notes too.
Yeah, thank you.
effectively as well.
Okay.
You focus on the discussion.
We want to get this to 3, sort of. Plus we have to add.
I mean, well, if you think that, yeah.
I think one way to think about it, if I can weigh in, is whatever the board's priorities are, the board is saying, I want regular information on this and what you're doing in the district. Of course, we're working on all of those things, but multiple pathways, for instance, may not reach the level of priority where the board needs to hear multiple times a year information on multiple pathways. Maybe it is.
The social emotional piece that's under here. I kind of don't want it in there because I kind of want it to be in this group as its own really important thing. These two seem very sort of similar. And I would like to see that social emotional piece under there. And personally, that's as important to me as excellence in teaching and learning.
And I think adding on to what Libby said, like what specifically do we want kind of information on and really like want to hone it on how we're doing. Because for instance, like I think we always want excellence in teaching and learning, but do we just want general excellence in teaching and learning, or like what a component of that is closing the academic achievement gap, and we know that gap is there, and we know that it really needs to be addressed. So we want to hone in on that, and we want to focus on that as kind of like an information point and an action point for the next year or two, rather than just getting like general general updates on how excellent we're doing and teaching, because that piece could get lost in the overall presentation on excellence, because we could in some ways be doing excellent, and and it could just be like, and by the way, that's the this part of it where we're not excellent, but we're excellent for all these places. We're not. That makes sense.
Yeah, wouldn't it depend on if you in the excellence in learning and teaching, you need that academic achievement gap as a top bullet point.
Yeah.
You're calling out that, hey, this is where we need the information. But also, including the other excellence in teaching, but not losing sight of the achievement. I agree with the fact that for me also academic achievement closing the gap is one of the top points.
So we're going to take like 3 to 5 of these, and then are we going to create a SMART goal for each one of those categories for the year?
So this is a question, I'm gonna bounce it right back to you.
Uh-huh.
Right, so this group and even this district hasn't, as far as I know, really done a strategic plan or set strategic goals in the past, so there's not a pattern.
Right.
At the board level, sorry, right. So, there's a continuous improvement plan, right? So the district team has already done this through that lens and does it in more local ways often. That's why I'm trying to telegraph that I do think it's complicated. So choose carefully, right? If belonging, safety, and wellness is the place under which social, emotional, behavioral learning resides, is that okay? Or does this need to be higher up, right? Right? Or does this need to be the top level goal? And some things, and then this belonging, safety, and wellness is like, okay, I think that's enough under control, but because we're really focused on this.
Well, I also get a little bit like sort of mixed up with, like Libby obviously runs these types of meetings for Adam team and is working on SMART goals within the district already. And now as a board, we're going to be setting some sort of like priority categories. And then we might be creating goals, but those goals will be for our work as a board or for the district.
Probably both, right? So to my read of that for example, one of the reasons I like this and I like some of the new policy language you all are considering is that it starts to bridge a challenge between the board and superintendent relationship, right? In the worst case, superintendent's underperforming and the board has like only a really big stick, like you're fired, or not so many carrots. It really depends upon a good working relationship. And so the policy language says quarterly reporting. Quarterly is pretty frequent if you're a big district administration. But what it does is it creates that sort of ongoing communication bridge, feedback loop. So I like that piece of the policy language. And then the question is, it seems fair to the administrative team to know what you're asking for. What are you paying most attention to? Like if we imagine a dashboard, yep, we care about all this stuff, but these 5 things or these 3 things are the most important right now. And what does right now mean? I don't know, 12 months, 18 months. And like I said, some of it might be 3 years, if you were to set a reasonable timeline, and some of it might be 6 months. So I think that's another, there's sort of multiple layers, right? So I think, I'm watching this board and you all are charged with being sort of conduits for the community. So on the one hand, you have folks saying, we've had these horrible experiences with some bullying incidents. What's going on? And you want to be able to respond to that. And the administration wants to be able to respond to that. Similarly, hey, I want my kid to be more successful at reading. What's going on with that? And if you, the board, feel as though, we really need to focus our district's energies to address some of these things, right? Reading, to me, is going to fit underneath something else, probably, because it's pretty specific and you're not in charge of choosing the curriculum. But you might find language that says, we're going to close the achievement gap, right? We're sick of academic performance outcomes being closely correlated to income or closely correlated, right? Damn it, we're better than that. Let's make it so. Okay. And then it's up to, in case Libby weren't focused on that, then she and her team have to figure out how to do that. So, I mean, I can be more prescriptive, but I don't think that it's my place to sort of decide.
So are we right now individually ranking these in our heads?
So here's what I'm going to go back. Let me pause. Is anybody noticing absence, right? So that's always the hardest question. Is there something you really care about that you've been hearing a lot about that is not represented up here or couldn't fit within one of these things? And if so, please write it on a piece of paper and get it up here. Second of all, close the achievement gap could be a product of, an outcome of excellence in teaching and learning. Or it could be that closing the achievement gap is the goal, gosh darn it. And this is a strategy, right? Excellence in teaching and learning is a strategy to serve that, as is recruit, retain, and develop high quality staff at all positions, right? Your theory of change might be, we can't close the achievement gap without excellent teachers. We are losing, I don't know if this is true, we're losing excellent teachers to South Burlington because they pay more.
Let's not start that rumor.
Sorry, but not accurate. Okay. We have an empty position. We have 2 empty positions at these highly skilled areas and special education. We're having trouble filling them. What would move the needle on that, right? So that, to me, that's the work of this.
Can we ask Libby, do you see anything missing? I mean, yeah, I was looking at them earlier to think about it. I think those are broad enough where you can put pretty much anything inside of it.
Right.
I feel like recruitment should be on its own still, because in my mind, one of the areas of recruitment or retention that comes up in my head is the principals. So it's not necessarily just the instructors that we want to retain. It's not all.
Would there be a different category that you would put it into, or would it be a general category?
It's important.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm gonna push. I'm gonna give you each 3 stickies. We're gonna do just a quick round of, if I choose 3 of these, that I think that are that feel most urgent or most important to me, and you don't have to hew to my model of thinking about that. But please, let's figure out, let's do a little draw forward here.
Oh, that's good.
Emma, you on the phone with me?
I got it.
Okay. You know what you need her proxy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to assert yourself if there's a way to do that. We're gonna give Mia a chance to participate. It's a little bit difficult remotely. Thumbs up. Okay, so
Just have her unmute. She's ready to go. Hey, Mia, just unmute your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't tell if these are combined, but I would put excellence in teaching and learning with closing the gap and vote for that. Belonging, safety, wellness, and put that with the HHB and vote for that. And then I haven't decided yet on a third one. Oh, connection with community and accountability. There it is. Found it.
Yeah, I really think like inclusion and belonging, safety, read what's under there, and wellness. And then partially the justice, equity, diversity, those 3 like have a lot in common.
Yeah.
Right.
Equitable outcomes and activities.
right, and the connection with community and accountability. I created that partly to demonstrate the complexity, right? You could think that most of the accountability is about sort of accountable to the community or connection to the community, but accountability could be it's completely its own thing. I think so. We've got a lot of agreement. Mia, just to read out loud, academic achievement, close the gap, is I think the highest vote getter. With some support, maybe underneath that for recruit, retain, and develop high quality staff at all positions. Next up is belonging, safety, and wellness. And then connection with community and accountability. Meet student needs, and that was ready to learn, meals, mental health, etc. That wasn't sent to you via email because that was generated on site. And then just justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion receiving 1 vote. So, question to the
Just as a side note, I've never seen that represented as Jedi, and I will not be using that.
Great.
As a Star Wars fan.
I sometimes use that because I think sometimes for groups, adding justice to that helps people think through that lens, which makes it less, makes it feel a little bit less like, wait, I'm about to be accused of being a racist. I'm not engaged in this topic. Whereas, oh, and we all care about justice. And then through that lens, we can enter a lot of this stuff.
Another favorite to add on there is belonging. B. You know.
Okay, so
That is good.
quick sort. Let's talk about academic achievement gap. is this an essential, is recruit, retain and develop high quality staff at all positions sort of an essential component of that? Or is that outside? I think what I would have you do is now start building what's below this. So far Libby is getting her wish, which is there are 3 top level goals. And then the question is sort of how specific do you want to get or right? Like, I like this one because it's specific. People know what that means. It's something the district and we're not alone struggles with, right? Then you might, then the interrogation, not the interrogation, but the discussion with Libby and her team would be, okay, what are going to be good indicators? Is there going to be anything meaningful mid-year? What would be the adjustments that would happen if we weren't hitting our goal, right? To me, that gets to be pretty interesting. Belonging, safety, and wellness, holy cow, it's a gigantic umbrella, right? Is that where social, emotional, and behavioral learning fits? Is that not? Talk to me more. And here, so.
I like the word you use, indicators.
Right.
Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be written as a SMART goal. I don't think. I think that's our administration goal. I'm always talking about, or that would be our administration's work. But to have board indicators that would give guideposts as to what you want to be reported out on, right?
And I also think that it would be nice as a board to have just board centered SMART goals for ourselves. Like, what is the work that we are going to do as a board for the next year for these 3 priorities?
That supports what Libby's doing.
Yeah, or just supports these 3 priorities. The work, I think it's a practice what you preach, but kind of like here we're setting this agenda and that needs to happen. It's like we're also committed to making this happen within whatever our capacity is to do that. Would it be okay to put the 3 at the top and see how many we can fit underneath them?
Yes, but I think that I think these will be most powerful if they are not too diluted, right? If they're right, the achievement gap that's pretty focused. How we get there, I'm not sure that road is clear, but so we'll put these up here and move everything else to the side. And you can also you don't have to acquiesce to Libby's desire to have only 3, right? One of these other ones you could decide, no, we're going to go with more than 3.
I'm feeling good about those 3.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about the large umbrella for the Jedi piece, and I'm wondering if there's a way that we can, it seems to deserve effort and intention to include it in each of the 3. It doesn't seem to be extractable from anything in a way.
It's certainly not. I mean, all of them. Yeah, you're not going to get student monitoring unless you're focused on justice, equity, and diversity and inclusion. You're not going to close the achievement gap unless you're focused on equity.
You major Venn diagrams.
Well, it's,
Yeah, I think community connection and accountability is making sure that we're reaching all of our. Also, so. Jedi values.
Well, what I like about the academic achievement is it's, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels more quantifiable.
Right.
Which then drives into, well, one of the ways to do it is using Jedi. Other, so you can fit other things, but the goal is quantifiable, which is what I like. And so I'm trying to come up with how can we quantify other, what are the other things that we can quantify that can become the goals?
So I keep drifting over here to my yellow sticky notepad. If you're sitting here thinking about what's quantifiable, what would the indicator be, right? It doesn't have to be only Libby who comes up with, here's what would be on the dashboard to indicate that. So if you're having thoughts about that as we are talking, or you're having thoughts about what contributes to success at this priority, write them down and put them up there, right? This is we can really be workshopping this in live time.
maybe a suggestion is that Jedi could be a theme for one of the indicators for each board.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion.
Like, yeah,
Something very different. There's a lot of that. Yeah. it's a- So for belonging, safety and wellness, I keep thinking back to the presentation that Jess Murray did. With the dashboard, the behavior dashboard, and that is gonna become a different piece of software that's gonna be more effective. And it's gonna drive a lot of efforts to support teachers and support kids to behave in a way that's effective for them and fair for them and helpful for the kids next to them. I don't know if
Yeah,
just a behavior dashboard is what's going to quantify the belonging, safety and wellness, but cover safety. But maybe just you and everyone else can figure out some kind of indicators that fit under that category that are accessible. Because it's tough to measure how safe kids feel, but you could measure the behaviors that are tracking.
That's what I was just asking Libby around student input and how that can be. If they have input into this process at all. And I think there are surveys and that sort of thing that you could use with students to ask them about how they feel about the goals that we've had, that we set up and how well we've achieved them. And if they have suggestions for things that might make it better.
And Lynn, are you seeing that primarily in the belonging, safety and wellness or across these?
I think you could have something that would look at all three.
yeah. I think, as a community, input for community and community service as well.
So then just a question in response to that. It might start to be useful to figure out which of these responsibilities sit with Libby and the administrative team in terms of reporting. And are there instruments, are you all in charge of the community survey instrument, or is that also administrative?
I mean, I don't want to put too much on the boards, we just think honestly.
Yep.
We don't have a ton of capacity, and I think certainly being a bridge to the community is a big part of it. Yeah, and part of our role is helping to set the priorities and, and you bringing that out.
I think that piece right there is the one that needs the most fleshing out, but the other two are obvious to educator minds like me. That I think we can do a pretty good job.
That's I think where the board has the biggest role.
Yeah, I think accountability for me is a big theme, like Nathan raised a couple of sort of like our red flag issues that have boiled to the surface over the past year. One being HHB and the other being literacy special ed. And so, and it's not just those things, there's other stuff that when community members come to us with concerns, I'm not always seeing good follow through or just not knowing it kind of goes into this like this for me first as an individual board member. So I don't know what the accountability piece is on the other end to sort of circle back to those folks and make sure that concerns are being followed up on and progress is being made. And I saw it more clearly with social emotional well-being was a big topic in all of the like effort fund listening sessions. And then there was like clear action from the admin team on that and in the budget and, moving forward. And there was quite a few sort of reports out on here's what we did with that red flag issue that arose.
I think that one big difference is I would be part of those conversations, and if people are writing to the school board directly or speaking friendly to the school board, I'm not a part of those conversations.
Yeah.
So unless there's a directive to act on it from my end,
Right.
that's one of the big differences with those two examples. Because I had clear directive to act on something with all the ESSER communities, and that was the purpose of those, right? For me to act on those, it was that strategy, but if, you know, I may see school board emails with the school board, MPS, PT, the one that was made. But if it's directed just to you all, that's an area of conflict for me. Do I answer? Does the board answer? Do I help the chairs answer? Like, who answers those emails?
Yeah,
To me, that's a system question.
Yeah.
Right, like, and resolve, not always can be a uniform answer
Right, yeah.
for this question, but I think that's a huge challenge, and you already face this all the time. You'll have people posting something on Facebook. And does the board respond? Does everybody on the board respond? Does one person on the board respond? Is there no response? All this stuff, you know, we just had a public comment involving a very specific incident
Right.
at a school. I would expect that there's no way that Libby can then respond directly to that comment because it's so specific. But you might say, can you get back to us in a couple of weeks about what does happen in cases like, you know, et cetera. Anyway, right.
Which part? How do we say, can you get back to us about outlier behavioral issues and the support system that goes into that is, I don't even know, don't know exactly how I would ask, but I also wouldn't know exactly what venue I would ask because meetings have agendas, and if I catch you somewhere, I might ask a question to try to get some knowledge, but I don't necessarily feel like I'm gonna ask a random question that's not related to the agenda in a meeting.
And those are the ones that responded. Right, go ahead, Mia.
I think that's a good question, Rhett, and I think that's the reason we're doing this process is to say, oh, that falls into the category of inclusion, safety, belonging, and wellness. We have on the upcoming, you know, in two board meetings, we have already on the schedule a presentation from Libby and Jess Murray on what progress is being made around that, and we can ask more specific questions about this during that. So I think that's, to me, that's why we're doing this, is so that we can have a place to have these conversations without them feeling like random or reactive.
Yeah, no, I think I was gonna say something similar. I mean, really like HHB. I mean, we've had multiple meetings on HHB and, you know, the frustration of the board is we oftentimes can't react in real time. And also, you know, these are kind of, you know, continuing themes that go through. So, you know, we've had Jess come in, we've had the training from, you know, Heather Lynn. We're definitely gonna, you know, revisit wellness and HHB. You know, the meeting that Mia mentioned, I'm sure we will have meetings after that. So each time, you know, we come in, like, that's the time we really like raise these questions, be like, well, we're hearing this from the community, you know, what's being done, what changes are being made. Or, you know, sometimes just understanding what the issue is and what the limitations are. I mean, you know, the context we live in, the input we get back, so we can go back and explain things to the community is important. I mean, it's, you know, our job is not necessarily, you know, someone comes in and says, I'm unhappy about this. Our job is not always to fix it. Sometimes that's, you know, there's reasons they're unhappy, but there's also reasons why the outcome the way it was. And, you know, there may be changes necessary, there may not.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to get too granular in like how do we, you know, I just wanted to raise accountability as one of the things that come up for me. And it can't, there's such a spectrum of like the issues that are brought before us that are, you know, sort of potentially is under our purview and we could help, you know, move the needle, or completely out of the scope of what we do, which is, you know, kind of what the issue that was brought tonight. It's like there's not really much, you know, but I still would like to see accountability with things that, like, just one individual coming with a story who captured an email, who's going to circle back to that person and let them know we heard you, who's going to connect them to the proper channels of like, maybe the school board isn't the place to like, you know, raise that issue, but you should contact the principal, or, you know, and we do have systems in place for the concerns that were brought up tonight. So it's just like, here's connecting you with our handbook on these protocols and things like that. Like, so even that level of accountability I'm interested in improving as a board. And I don't, it's obviously not going to be me as an individual that reaches out to that person, I don't think. But I still think that people should feel heard and understood and then reacted to on some level. There should be some responsiveness.
Well, I think when we look at that community connection and accountability, I mean, we could kind of track the kinds of things the issues that people are raising, right? And maybe we have a quarterly board newsletter that goes out, or something from you that goes out to the community online, and that just talks about these are some issues that were raised and in general, right? Not specific cases. And these are how we're managing behavior at the school, or this is how we're managing communication with the community, or, if we had some kind of regular schedule for just any kind of general topics that we think it would be helpful, not just at budget time. Right.
And most of the time there's like a really positive, really positive information that we can provide people. Like, we've actually made a lot of progress on this, and like, it's an opportunity for us to like reach out to the community and make them feel, rest assured, like this is a priority of the school. It's already being worked on. Like, here's the different things that have been done over the last few years. But some of that is going sort of unnoticed by the community.
Well, because they don't have any way of knowing, because a lot of the stuff is private, right?
Right.
But I think we could speak in general to this is how we manage behaviors, or this is our protocol, or,
And I think some of it actually is being noticed. I mean, I like a lot of the conversations I have with community members, when you engage them, a lot of people are very pleased with what they're doing and noticing what we're doing. But when they're feeling that way, they don't come and oftentimes tell us that.
Yeah, an example that's rising to mind, which I told all of you already at a meeting, was like, I went to a middle school sort of welcome meeting with Julie, and there were some things that she was talking about where everyone was like, huh, I didn't know we had that. And it was like, it was all news to them, and it's not bad. It wasn't like a bad reaction. It was just sort of like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I didn't realize that we had that. And it was like, oh, darn, that should be an opportunity. I don't know how, but that's why it's a goal.
Yeah, that's exactly why. That's what I was thinking. That's why it's risen to the top as a goal, because we all feel that there is a need for all of us, including the administration, to reach out to the community.
Yeah.
And so if we make that a goal, that gives them an opportunity to work on it and to see how we can improve in that, right? We certainly see a need to improve it, right? So then we put the processes and come up with the administration's help, we can come up with these things.
So I want to.
Maybe I'm getting us off track. I'll just really quickly then.
Gonna take us off track. Go ahead.
I hadn't thought about the whole like follow through before. So thank you for explaining that. Like, it would be helpful to be able to like have a plan for connecting people with, because a lot of times there is an answer and it might actually be a satisfactory one. But I do want to caution, I think, this happens in my job as well, is Libby does blogs, she does podcasts, she does regular updates. We have twice monthly board meetings where we have so like you can lead a horse to water, but I'm not sure. I'm very cautious about whenever we make an ask or come up with an idea that we then hand off, then we have to take something else off of the administration's plate to make room for that. We can't just keep piling. So I actually don't know what else we could ask of them for the connection with community. Maybe that's something we need to own a little bit more as a board.
Yeah, and that's what I'm wondering, because there is a lot of information out there. I mean, you just named a few. There's also, all sorts of principals put out, weekly newsletters. I don't read them all. It's just, I think there are a lot of people who are busy.
Yeah.
And when they see something sideways, they notice, but oftentimes, it's not until they, do something that they're kind of a captive audience in front of Julie, because they're there for an event, and we're like, oh, right. She's telling me, my guess is probably a lot of information she told them had been in, the emails she sent out weekly that, went unread. So, I definitely agree we need to do a better job of connecting, but I also think, we have to be realistic that we're not doing nothing. That's right.
So this is into the weeds and I'll get out of it really quickly, but if you, there are certain blogs or you'll, let's say there's a publication and there are articles about many things. Oftentimes at the base of an article, it'll list visibly what the keywords are, right? This article addresses this person's name, these themes, right? I don't know how much work that would be, how much.
Thank you, that's good.
Right, because like you do a blog thing or the principal writes, so, salon salutes. There's information about, basketball, French exchange students, it's a few sort of almost hashtags. And if you sort of develop that ecosystem, then Emma gets an incoming call like, this happened, I'm so upset. Right, let me show you, here's some links to what's already out there. If you still have questions, or something like that. Anyway.
Nathan reads them.
Our students are here currently.
I just want to say one thing quickly, and that is, all of you have kids in the school or you work in the school. I don't. And so when you talk about all these resources, I'm not familiar with them and I'm new to the board. So I'm just, I'm figuring this all out.
Well,
But I think for other people in the community who don't have kids in the school, maybe we need to let them know that all of this information is available somewhere.
I mean, another thing that might be easy to do is make sure that information gets kind of easily archived. So like all the, Gator News and so on salutes are just on a page, like, kind of listed and with a couple keywords. So that way, if someone's like, I'm feel a little out of touch with the high school, I've been busy, what's been going on, they can go and instead of like hunting through their emails, can just, read down like,
And just for everybody's information, they are posted on our website. And archived on our website.
Okay, so I'm gonna.
Mia's got a question.
Yeah.
So that goes off in a different track.
Yeah, she can go and then it's my turn.
Okay. I have a question that will switch gears when we're ready. Mia, please move on to a new topic.
New topic. Well, as a segue, I'll just say my 2 cents on the community engagement and accountability. I'm thinking of that as a I'm just agreeing with those who said this is a little bit more of the board function. That falls into sort of like a board function goal for me than more of a student outcomes kind of goal. So I'm also thinking about it as far as like what more could the board be doing on that? And the question that I wanted to ask brings us back to the academic achievement theme. And I'm thinking about what Nathan said at the beginning of this conversation, where he was naming things that, asking us to think of things in categories of important and urgent. And I'm wondering if we as a board want to narrow this goal down to address something that we have been hearing is urgent, which would be literacy, and say that actually for the next couple of years, the board is going to have a real focus on literacy and not just academic achievement, but not have it be so broad as to address academic achievement. So I just wanted to pose that to my fellow board members to see if you think that would be appropriate.
I mean, my thought is I want to hear more. I mean, because we've heard a few voices on literacy. We've also heard about closing the achievement gap for several years. I mean, I would like to hear about where the administration really feels, because I know literacy is a loaded topic and we're not experts. I would like to hear from the administration about kind of what they feel the focus for closing the achievement gap should be. I know literacy is a big piece of that, but do we want to be that narrow in focus? Because I know there's a lot.
Completely up to the board. I can see both ways. I mean, would you miss the information on math? If you weren't getting that information, like that would just be my question. Would you miss the other stuff?
And we haven't had we have not had like a real deep dive on, how you're teaching literacy, your approach to literacy, your interpretation of the information we were presented. I mean, very smart and educated parents, but not educators. So I'm sure you have opinions on the information that was presented. So, I mean, I'd like to hear a little more
my thought is I'd like to hear a little more from the administration about the approach to literacy and where you feel the deficits are before I would want to limit it specifically to that. Because right now we have, I think, a sliver of information and not the whole lot.
I also think highlighting literacy as like.
Yeah.
Narrowing the focus wouldn't be to the exclusion of us hearing about math data, right? It would just give you a direction to say, for the next few years, maybe literacy can be elevated as a priority.
So literacy is our priority for
I
the
know,
next
and
couple of
that
years,
is-
so that is we're actually moving away from some of the PD with math. Specific targeted PD with math, because we've been there for a while.
Right.
So, we are moving it. My only concern with that, and it's not really a concern because it matches what we're doing anyway, would be if it's the summer, the board's in a retreat. We have plans in development around literacy, and the board says, no, we want to hear all about science. Like science should be your priority for the coming years. That's where I'd have to say, hey, hold on, you can't just change that in July, kind of thing. So that would be my only concern for years down the road.
I also think saying close the gap, academic achievement and closing the gap mentions nothing about curriculum or teaching methodology. So I think like the concerns that you're raising are sort of second, not under our umbrella and not really related to this goal. It's like, if she can show us that they're closing the gap and increasing academic achievement, I'm not sure that we're going to even dig into what methods are you using. It's like the proof is in the data.
So I have a question, okay.
When I think about literacy and I know how important that is, I wonder about what's happening in this building and what's happening for kids that are going in many different directions and that need support in many different directions. Multiple pathways doesn't come up as one of our priorities here, but I wouldn't want to have the kids in this building that are doing so many different things not remain a place where we have some focus at sometimes, even if it's not one of these priorities. I feel like when we're talking about, there's a big difference to me between, I feel like elementary school is like foundational learning, middle school, social emotional learning, high school, what do you want to do? And how do we find that for you? And that doesn't fit into any of these. That's sort of, I don't know how
that it does fit into academic achievement and closing the gap. It would be harder if we were focusing on one content area at the high school to show different types of data, but we can do that. You know what I mean? However, I think that, we were just talking today about the data we collect at the high school and knowing, for instance, goes into the belonging piece actually of students who participate in co-curriculars and who are those students and who are repeat students in those because belonging matters so much. So like we were talking about that kind of data today, it just might not fit under academic achievement. However, we haven't named what high level of learning in literacy is in high school yet. Like, what do we mean when we say that? What level of proficiency are we looking for? And if we name that, then I can provide data on where we are with that. Cool.
I mean, I know
And
there's
Libby, just a follow-up question on that. It would be you and your team who would name what high level literacy looks like in high school, right?
Yeah.
Not us. Okay, right. Good.
Yeah, I mean, with academic achievement and then the close the gap, is it academic achievement and then like side point close the gap, or is it really academic achievement with just that singular goal, close the gap? Because if it's academic achievement period and then also close the gap, I think things like multiple pathways could and should be included.
I think multiple pathways falls into that. And I see academic achievement for all.
Mhm.
You can close the gap by having everyone drop to the bottom. That's not.
Just to be clear again, and eliminate rumors.
So I read that as academic achievement for all.
It's more like the excellence in teaching.
And multiple pathways is a strategy and a method.
But even there, you can show data on there, which students are taking advantage of multiple pathways. What's their socioeconomic status? What, what are they doing? Why are they taking multiple pathways? There's lots of good information there that we haven't.
That's,
It's centered around closing that gap.
that was what I was gonna ask. It came up earlier around, some information can't be shared or isn't visible, but I think if, for example, if you all choose or Libby chooses to track, to focus, pay a lot of attention to folks for whom there is an achievement gap, or there has historically been an achievement gap, and you look at that longitudinally, and then you can tell a story and you can set benchmarks. We think we'll be on the path to success if we're starting to see this curve bend this way, right? I mean, is that how?
Well, we know what our gaps are, socioeconomic status and students with special needs,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So we'd be looking at a pretty targeted
Yep.
demographic group across multiple years, because that's not gonna go away tomorrow.
I'm just doing a quick time check. I think my window of time is closing. This is, to me, looking like quite productive so far.
Yeah, super.
I don't, I suspect you all can carry this forward. If I'm Jim and Mia and Libby looking forward to at agendas, I would sort of put a pin in this episodically on quick rotation until you've got it resolved.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of thinking along this lines too, really it's more, the agendas in terms of what we want to hear about.
Nathan, will you put the post-its on the figure sheet and give those to me so I can put them on?
Sure will. And I'll also photograph and send that to you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, super helpful.
Okay, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
Good night.
But you're welcome, my pleasure, et cetera.
The equity committee want to give an update or
Yeah, do it.
Mia? You don't, Chris is not here, so if you want to do an equity committee update, great. If we want to punt that to another meeting, that's fine too, if you're not feeling prepared.
Well, we will have more. I believe the deadline we gave for the equity audit was the 10th of February. So we will have more for the board in not too distant future, because I suspect we'll be bringing forward a proposal for whom to hire. But other than that, we don't have much to report.
Yeah. Great, thank you. So policy monitoring, we have approval of the D12 prevention of employee harassment monitoring report. Do I have a motion to approve D12?
I move that we approve the D12 policy monitoring report.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? And on to policy reasons, like we're doing a fifth and final reading of A20 through A24. Any questions, comments, edits?
So the thing is, Jim, is that we haven't met as a policy committee since the last read.
Yep.
So there only are comments and changes to be made on A23.
Okay,
But we have not made those changes yet.
Yep.
So I would just offer, if anyone has anything else to add at this point, our next meeting is on the 3rd. My hope is to have these changes made at that time, and then we can move them forward for what, being passed, or do we need another reading
we
after?
probably
they've
need
been
another
revised?
reading if there's changes,
Okay.
yeah. No.
So I'm not sure that we had to have them on tonight's agenda unless anyone has any pressing feedback.
Well, yeah, no downsides. So if there's anything people noticed or anything we should include before the policy committee meets. And you can email them to us before we meet too. That way we can
Yeah.
make sure the 6 is the final reading. Um,
Isn't that what they say? 6th time is a charm?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think that's what it is.
Sometimes even 7.
Considering there's, 5 policies there,
Yeah,
6 readings on 5 policies
Yeah,
isn't bad.
exactly.
Could be
Well,
15. Could be 15, 3 each.
Yeah.
But we can talk about library materials.
Yes, let's talk about library materials. Do you want to
Sure.
tee it up and how it came to us?
Yeah, so I'm forgetting her name right now, Sue.
Sue Monami,
Yes.
How do you pronounce it?
Monami.
Monami, who's the librarian here at the high school, met with the other librarians in the district. And together they looked at a Vermont School Boards Association sort of draft policy, or what, it didn't come from Vermont, it came from Vermont Librarians Association.
Yeah.
It didn't come from VSBA. They looked at that model policy and they sort of drafted, made their own version, made little tweaks to it, changes to it, and personalized it for what they felt was best for this district. And so this is that draft. Sue came and presented it to the policy committee, and we sort of went through with some of our questions and made a couple more revisions at that meeting. And so this is the first draft of that policy. And so if anyone, this is the first of hopefully 3 reads. So if you have any suggested edits, we can go into the document now and I can make those as comments and then move them into the policy committee for revision.
Yeah, no, and huge thanks to all the librarians that put thought into this. I think it's
Yeah.
a great policy and really appreciate them stepping up and presenting it to us.
And they feel really strongly
Yeah.
about it and want us to adopt it.
So any initial thoughts, edits, or comments? Otherwise, we can move it along for second reading.
I thought it was interesting that it seems like family members of students can use the libraries, which.
We talked about that.
This would be my public library.
Yeah,
It's a great selection. To test.
it's closer. I mean,
We discussed possibly adding language there to make sure that people couldn't point to this policy and say, I can come into the school anytime I want. And, I forget exactly
it
what
says if it's not disruptive.
so obviously there has to be some like layer where they're like checking with the front office and finding out if it's okay for them to come onto campus. But we decided ultimately not to like add any stronger language than that because we felt like it was sort of self-explanatory.
No coffee in the New York Times.
Right, right.
Is there anyone else in the stack? Because I have a few questions.
Yeah, no, go for it, Mia. I think floor is yours or the screen.
Okay, thanks. I also really appreciate this policy and I'm excited that we have a draft of it and I hope we adopt it. Largely as it is. As I was reading through it, I was thinking to myself, how will we ensure that we're meeting it and monitor and hold ourselves accountable? And so I wondered if the intent, what's written up as the intent, which I think is fantastic, if that is also the outcome, and then that way we would say whether or not we're meeting that outcome. I just offer that as a question for the policy committee to, I don't know, to think about. And then go ahead, Jim. What?
I can call it by computer. I just need to remind myself of what the intent was. So I don't have it on my screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first 4 paragraphs. of it. It's titled Policy and Intent. And I think the last paragraph of that feels to me like that's the outcome of this policy. That's what we're striving for. So I think the only change would be to call this intent and outcome, like change the subheading of it or whatever. But anyway, that's just a thought that I had. Another thought that I had was under the implementation section, if whether or not it would make sense to have metrics, or if those are the metrics. Again, I am just thinking about how we, in future years, hold ourselves accountable and check and make sure that we are in line with what we want. We're doing what we say we're going to do.
I'd want to check with the librarians to see if what metrics are possible. Cause I don't know, not being a librarian, I'm not sure how they categorize them beyond genre and author. So I would just want to make sure that, that the metrics were feasible.
Yep. Yeah. And just, I don't think it necessarily has to be numbers. But I second that, Libby. That makes sense to check with them and make sure that we're not holding them or ourselves as a district to something that doesn't make sense. Another idea that I had, and I was using that equity policy tool that the equity committee came up with and using it as sort of like a gut check on this first draft. And so the stakeholders came up for me, and I wonder if it would be possible to include stakeholder involvement in some way. Like maybe what we're saying is once a year or every couple of years, we survey students to know whether or not we're meeting the intent and the outcomes of this policy, so that we are not, it's not just us who are saying, yeah, we think that we're, all students can find themselves in our books, but in fact, we're asking students, if that's the reality for them. So that was another thought that I had for the
Yeah,
policy.
you're bringing up some themes that have applied to just more general discussions around policy and procedure. And so one of the things has been like that we would like to see maybe more speak to metrics and sort of benchmarks of success in meeting policies embedded within the policy. I think a lot of times it feels like it sort of lives more in procedure currently, that some of this stuff could live in procedure. So if we're talking about like stakeholder engagement or how many, that once a year we survey students, like something like that could live in a procedure. But we've been having that conversation about like, do we embed certain things into the actual language of the policy so that when they're being monitored, those things are being highlighted as priority to report back on. Yeah.
That's the question for me is, does it rise to the level of, if we're, should we run through this as we're monitoring it? Is that like, for example, would we survey stakeholders as part of the monitoring process?
And I wonder if that's across the board too, because I think there's a lot of policies where, particularly, where a student could be useful to see, how they're feeling, and, part of it could be one question of several that we do, annually or semi-annually with students.
And the other thing you brought up, Nina, about the headings, the policy, intent, outcomes. So that was another thing we had talked about, and I think we probably likely will change, because the formatting that we're moving towards is to have a statement of intent as the opening paragraph, and then to have the body of the policy. So I think we probably will end up changing that. I don't know about the outcome section. We'll talk about that.
Emma, did the librarians provide the procedural document for you?
I don't believe I saw that. Jim, did you see a procedure?
It's linked on the policies. I just clicked it up. So I'm assuming the librarians wrote that.
Okay.
It just needs some tweaks. That's all.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not something the board. That's something that I would write. So,
right.
There's just something that I would change.
And that's not the procedure for following this policy. That's a procedure if somebody has an issue with
Right,
something that's in the library, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I'm not sure who wrote that. I think the librarians may have got this. You remember what their source was, Emma? I think they.
May have gotten the procedures from somewhere,
I think both the procedure and the policy came. I think they.
from the Librarian Association.
Yeah.
I think.
My guess is that is where the procedure came from.
Which is fine. There's just, the complainant shall read the policy, like we can't force anybody to read anything.
Yes.
There's just some language in there that
That needs
doesn't need to
amending.
be there.
Okay, excellent. Well, we will, yeah, that's great input, Mia, and we'll particularly on that first section, make it a little clearer and, I think the idea of surveying stakeholders goes to the community connection piece too, that we just talked about. So I think we should just give thought to that as a board about which stakeholders we want to reach out to and how throughout the year and, getting input from not just students, but community members as well. And I think like the lens of how they feel about how our policies are being implemented is a huge one for. And bless you. So great, we can move on to second reading with some amendments there. Amendments coming 823. And now I think we can have executive session, which trying to figure out the best way to make sure Mia comes with us. Do you want me
Reed
to?
just logs into the meeting. Am I coming with you or no?
I think you can go home.
Okay, so
Yeah.
one of you would just log in the meeting and then
Yep, let me
Anna can make that person host.
let me just.
Is there a reason why the executive session isn't on the agenda?
We added it,
Okay.
at the beginning.
Oh, it is.
The executive session is next.
not
In the draft agenda for next time.
Yeah.
15th.
It's because the superintendent eval committee is working to, we got all of the responses on Friday, did the Monday and yesterday. So we're just moving quickly here.
Jill, you want to make that motion?
It's
Yeah.
on the agenda, right? It's on.
It's on the 15th.
20th
Version.
Yeah, we don't need the whole special one for.
Oh, for that. Okay.
Discussing personnel.
I said that.
We're gonna mute this before it goes so nuts. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great,
And you are co-host, Jim,
perfect.
so you can make a breakout room.